Whoa. Happy new moon and eclipse upon us. New moon in Libra. You, me, and Bone Daddy over here are gonna pull some cards. Forgive the rush, but that's just where we are in the world. You know, perpetually. It's funny, I feel like the weather getting so cold so fast. I mean, at least here, the season's changing very fast in general. Moving into the end of the calendar year. When it happens that fast, the body doesn't adjust that well, and I do feel like, despite the rushing, a huge part of our mind and body is sort of caught in between the, like, aren't I supposed to be resting and saving, and the aren't you supposed to be moving and working and doing more? Don't you still have deadlines? And those two things kind of going at each other, which is interesting because even just looking at where the planets are falling on the new moon, like not proper eclipse, I guess there's still glimpses of slivers or what have you, but very much in line with Eris and Mars. Something else? Moon, Eris, Mars. Yeah. Which, like, both of those are also in very different, I guess, competitive astrological signs. Not so much that they don't get along, but they may not always see things through the same lens, even though they often do want the same goals, or have the same sort of vigor to the way that they move. So I do think that'll be kind of very much that literal conversation with ourselves, and both can be kind of unruly, I suppose, if we feel like the angel and devils on our shoulders are a bit of bullies. But we pull, and we see what happens. I really like that. We stick, we stay. And much like we are hanging out together, and there are cards in between us, and you, me, and Bone Daddy are going to pull some cards. We'll make ourselves available to any energy that passes through, and we're going to take 3 deep breaths together. You'd be surprised what you can do with 3. Take a deep breath in, and exhale. Take a deep breath in, and exhale. Take a deep breath in, and exhale. Okay. Do I just say this? I feel slightly defensive. More like I'm blocking and protecting than I am in, like, investing or creating. And I felt very limited in the way that breath came through, which is interesting. What are the ways, I mean, maybe that's anxiety in the ways that we hold our breath, the ways that we hold tension, the ways that we hold stress, but the ways that we can also sort of cut ourselves off in release because we hold our breath, or force it or rush it, and it becomes very sharp and very emptying. Like, not emptying in the exhale, but like empty as in not enough on the inhale. Take more time. Take more time for yourself. As I'm like racing the clock too. But the limited, we'll focus on the limited aspect of this. Magician is the center of it, and the magician is limitless. The Magician has both worlds in unison, which is equal expansions, equal opposites. So, you know, keep that in mind too. Sometimes, not that it's like a cure-all, but sometimes it's like a helpful reminder that, like, my bads don't last forever, just like the happiness doesn't, and my bads are only this bad because I'm so capable of good things. You know, I only hurt this bad, I only mourn this bad because I had such love. It's hard to think of things that way, but I don't know, it's helped me accept bipolar. Among many things, it's helped me accept a lot of death, honestly. The Queen of Swords inverted, Magician inverted, 5 Swords inverted, 10 of Wands inverted. Okay. Again, a lot of rushing, a lot of bright ideas, a lot of zoom, zoom, zoom kind of energy at the midst of this. But the Magician understands limitlessness. That's full breath. That's big breaths. That's like there was one time I got pierced, and I remember first suspension, and somebody was like, "Holy shit, that was a long breath," and I was still happily exhaling, because I could hold so much. A little funny anecdote, but that versus the way that I was breathing initially, like those are two different open worlds. One's like claustrophobia and anxiety, and the other is like a breath of fresh air. You know, that first breath of air when you go on vacation and you're like away from home for a little while and you're in the mountains or whatever, it's not city air, can feel very fulfilling. The Magician is also one. This is where we step into, I guess, step off the carousel of chaos and step into and through whatever door it is that we imagine or that we want, because the Magician can picture those things and create reality of it. So wherever it is that, like, you know, on the other side of door number 2 is everything you ever hoped and dreamed. Is everything that you ever thought you would be. This is kind of that funny transition, and I felt that since the full moon. But I think we're starting to understand maybe a little bit more about the things that hold us back, or the things that poke holes in our plans, the doubts, or even if you want to think about it in terms of, like, you know, every thought you have adds to your manifestation. To some degree, yes, like, you do kind of sow your own reality or sow your own doubt within it, or, you know, sort of tear at the seams of the strength of your ideology. And, you know, anything that does fall needs to be re-stabilized. But when we focus on, like, the Queen of Swords knows how those things feel in her heart, therefore in her spine. It's not just, like, pure logic. It is emotion fueled by logic. It's kind of like, what I'm getting is, like, the difference between just understanding feeling and understanding, like, Kundalini energy and energy dynamics. Like, it's not just a feeling, it is an energy that flows from your root through all octaves to your third eye and beyond. This is also why a lot of chimes will ring in like A or G. What is it? G sharp and A flat are very similar in, like, octave steps, and that's not so much past and present, but it is, you know, where we really, it is past and present, but we'll get to that. It is very much where your heart feeds your head, and because of that also feeds the body and the soul. Like, it's where your heart and your identity and your sense of full realization and interconnectedness starts to understand that all things are connected, and gets to circulate that back down and find out and find more within the root system because of its branching. In the same way that, you know, trees reach out, but their branches reach out equal, if not more. And that does sort of create the limitations of its growth, for sure. So how are we maybe more focused on only the root growth and, you know, where it's bound, where we're root bound, and, you know, how that's stressing out our growth. You know, why can't I reach this far? Maybe it's because you're like all knotted up in the root area, and you know, like very literally like a plant would be. Of course, it can't extend itself when it's knotted out of eye shot. I don't know if that's the correct word to say it. When it's knotted and hidden is a better way to say that. The Five of Swords is also like limitation, but it's limitations and structuring that I think we know feels wrong or feels off or feels inauthentic or feels like it's not honoring your ideas or your plans or your passions to some degree. You know, like how if you know, have this 5-year plan to do this thing, you know, how much are we investing in that in small ways, in small change on the way to that? And like, that's a big example. I don't even have a 5-year plan. Not a lot of us do. But in little ways, you know, like starting a new painting, you know, little steps to get there, you know, gesso, stretchers, da-da-da-da-da, you know, if there's a paint you don't have. But the little steps and the little resources that we have to ultimately widen that scope, because like you get an idea and you narrow in all of the things that need to happen in order to make that idea flourish, right? But as you make those steps, you start to expand space too as well, and start to see that idea really come together. But that comes in maybe like small passions, small joys, small little bits of faith in those little movements that you make. Which is also making our way toward the magician. The magician does not doubt the small moves he makes, and also knows that the small move is never that small. And sometimes the smallest moves have the biggest effects. I mean, new moons bring some crazy shit, and it's not even like visible in the sky per se. So, you know, there's that. There's a lot of energy to do, and there's a lot of energy to move. However, go with what you feel. Don't become so attached to those ideas as they change that you become defensive of any sort of detouring. And don't rush those things along because you strangulate creativity in that way. This can be illuminating rather than explosive, essentially. All right. Numbers. Because even as I tell you not to rush, I'm not really, but it's good that I'm figuring out how to not ramble for an hour, I suppose. Perfect. I don't know why, I just like that sound. All right. Much like we are hanging out together and making ourselves available to whatever comes through on the tap, 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 the root of the moon. I'm going to take a deep breath in. And exhale. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Okay, that's interesting. There's a little bit more of a pivot. And both active and receptive qualities are necessary. Both opinions are necessary. I feel like this is very much like the Eris and like Ceres and Mars, like bickering, I suppose. Or the like Scorpio Aries red energies we were talking about earlier, just kind of bickering, but like not really saying that they're talking about the same thing. But they both sort of bat this idea sort of into the air to keep it sort of elevated. So, you know, in what ways can we use disagreement as a resource to really sort of like nail in the things that we want? Sometimes those are the ways that we need to see those things. Is it's not an impediment, but it is an opportunity to really solidify what it is that you mean, what it is that you want, what it is that is necessary in the situation in this moment, and it becomes kind of playful in that way. And maybe that's more what we learn from our enemies or those that oppose our point of view, so that we can understand a more full, whole idea. That's really interesting, actually, and gives me a few thoughts on some things. But that's not to say, like, give your enemy the benefit of the doubt, but it is to say there is a bridge of understanding, and whether or not that doesn't necessarily mean like understand your enemy. Like in a very obvious example, we don't need to understand Nazis. Gosh, I hope that doesn't get flagged. But it does allow for some clarity and definition as to why you move in the direction that you do. I have heard often, especially if we're going to take this political, that reading alternate sources that you maybe wouldn't necessarily go to is often a good way to like understand the enemy, what kind of enemy, understanding the jargon that they use. And essentially, I only say enemy because, or like in quotes, because they live in a separate reality. And so understanding somebody else's reality can be maddening. But you do start to understand the possibilities of impossibility and the level of madness or magic that exists within you, or in the counterpoint or opposition or what have you. The ways in which that we can still build ourselves up from those kinds of experiences. I'm being a little deliberately vague, but that's okay. Just trying not to get shadow banned. Oh, interesting. Okay. 9 of Diamonds. That's a lot of good things. I don't want to say maybe too much, but maybe a distracting amount. I feel like that's going to involve a lot more of paying attention to your surroundings than it is paying attention to what's in front of you. Which is funny. I've never really gotten that from this card, but it's quite loud this time. It's going to have a lot more to do with things like pay attention to what you hear. Maybe you'll be in a situation where like you'll hear something and you're just like, I don't like that. Or something that's just like, why is that sitting? Like, why is that living in my head rent free? Why is that still playing in my head? And it's often because it sits somewhere in your body that it does, that is brewing. Sometimes people can send you very poor energy or very negative energy. And if that makes your body angry, your body can hold on to that and it can make you very sick. In some way or another. It depends on how your body wants to show you that. And if you hold on to it. But in those circumstances too, you can not unhear it, but drown out that frequency to the way that your body recognizes it. But pay attention to those sounds. Pay attention to your surroundings, at most. But you'd be surprised what that how that can narrate the way that the world is moving around you. It is all connected. Sometimes, I swear, like my favorite or A's favorite song will play and it's like all the birds will move in one direction, or, you know, everything sways in this perfect way that it's almost like playing strings on everything because it is all connected. Queen of Hearts, Queen of Diamonds, Jack of Hearts. I do think that brings me back to this sort of playfulness idea, this sort of like batting around of ideas and you using opposition as more of a resource to really create a strong sediment and base under whatever it is that you're building ideologically or emotionally or spiritually or what have you. It does make me think. We've got lots of suit cards, 2 queens, jack. Ooh, okay. 2 things. If this has to do with the Scorpio Aries or the Eris series, Mars energy, Eris Mars energy, one of those ideas has to do with an insecurity. Like one of those ideas is very nourishing. One of those ideas is seeking more nourishment, but is very insecure that it doesn't have enough. And that can be very much 2 people where maybe the opposition is because one is very insecure, is feeling less than, or is feeling like they're not good enough. On the other hand, maybe that's our, internal monologue that's sort of like thwarting ideas and cutting us off at the knees and sort of questioning this Queen of Swords and what we really know about this energy and the way that it's traveling. Either way, it can be all internal or it can be all external. It's all connected. But that does, with the Jack of Hearts, I think that, because even the cards are like, one's inverted, one's not. So they're not saying eye to eye, obviously. And there's a lot of energy in Gemini, and I know that can be sort of this or that energy rather than this playful investigation, which it could be too, which it wants to be. It wants to create more fertile circumstances for that. What did I say? Something investigation? I don't know. Rewind for like 2 seconds. But the Jack of Hearts is very much a playful nature in whether that be exploring outside or exploring inside, which quite honestly for me and in the internal monologue kind of way, exploring any of those options is kind of like to absurdity, and a lot of times I do it to make myself laugh, and that will kind of like redistribute the particles of the situation, if that makes sense. And maybe that's also something that we can just hold on to as things get a little rocky, because there's another eclipse, I'm pretty sure, and just out here with these winter feels, and it's not even that cold yet. But yeah, that playfulness I'll even sort of use to entertain myself, and yes, those darker thoughts and those very frustrating situations, because you'd be surprised how laughter is healing and how much more you can see in any given situation when you're not looking through stressed eyes. Yeah, awesome. Actually, I feel like that's a really fucking awesome place to end it. I hope you don't see through stressed eyes. I hope you get to see clearly, both tonight and for, as much as we can on this weird little journey that we're all on. But that's all I got for you. I love you. Party on. Happy new moon. And I hope that this resonates. If it does, party on. If it doesn't, take bits and pieces and leave the rest. Party on. Either way, party on. Me and Bone Daddy are out of here. Bye.